for that. Good morning, everyone. Good morning, once again. I want to welcome you all to the day 3 of the ERP session. We started about 3 weeks ago. We had 2 sessions already, so this would be the third and the last of the 3 sessions, right? So we understand that for ERP, F&O in particular, the application is a very, very robust one, and Microsoft in recent time has divided the application into modular application, right? So we have supply chain management, we have finance, we have HR, we have project operation, and we have commerce, all bundled together, known as finance and operation, right? So realistically speaking, it is very, very difficult to learn the whole of the application in 3 sessions, right? And even on the field, you find out that we have specializations, right? So we have in these different areas, we have functional consultants for finance. You could be a functional consultant for supply chain, functional consultant for commerce, project operation, and HR functional consultant, right? And also, aside from being a functional consultant, you could also be a technical consultant, then a solution architect, right? So my point being that the application is very, very robust, and the plan was to give us a soft landing and let us get started and get comfortable with the application, right? So in the previous weeks we talked about what an ERP system is, for those that are entirely new into the ERP industry, right? So what does ERP mean? That was the first session we had, right? So even if you did not have any IT background, or you don't have any background with ERP systems, right? So the first session we took the explanation from ground up, and we talked about what ERP can do, and how large enterprises leverage ERP applications to boost their businesses. And we looked at a couple of case studies, in the case of Amazon and Apple, and we also talked about the other ERP systems that we have, Oracle, NetSuite, SAP, and others, right? So we also looked at the Microsoft ERP ecosystem, right? So Microsoft has different flavors of ERP, right? So they have Navision, Business Central, then they have this F&O that we are currently on, and they also have some other ones. They have SL, Dynamics, Solomon. We are probably not familiar with it. They also have GP, Great Plain, right? So they have all these other offerings, but being that Microsoft, in recent time, they are moving their business towards clouds, right? So the other ERP offerings that we have, they don't really get much attention, right? In terms of development, in terms of having a roadmap. So the major ones are the BC, Business Central, which is an upgrade of Navision and F&O. And Microsoft just made Business Central a SaaS application, right? So the SaaS version is available for customers within this region. It was not available for customers within this region before now, but June this month, Microsoft has made BC SaaS version available, right? But our focus was not on BC. We just had to talk about it because the session was ERP based, right? So our focus is on finance and operation. And last week, my colleague Chidima took us through, the financial modules. We talked about general ledger, and she was able to create. Okay, she started from creating legal entities, right, as part of the important configuration, fiscal calendar, currencies, and she talked about the different accounts, chart of accounts, in your general ledger setup, right? So we also have other modules, accounts payable, right? With your accounts payable, you are able to manage your vendors, right? So you have a workspace for that, and you're able to manage your vendor. We'll be dropping more resources for learning purpose out at the end of this session, right? So we can leverage on them, learn more. But we're having internal talks to also have a more comprehensive series, right? So maybe later in July, we would have sessions, that would be in depth and would focus on finance, would focus on those different modular areas, right? But for now, this is just more like, an overview, an introductory session, right? So talking about the finance part, we have the other modules. We have the accounts payable, where you're able to manage your vendors. You can see a list of all your vendors. You can see the vendors on hold, vendors past due. You have all these settings. You're also able to manage your purchase orders, right? So you're able to see your purchase orders, your invoices, payments. We have a lot of reports available, vendor aging reports, for managing your vendors. We also have account receivable on the other end of this, of the finance aspect, right? So it has to do with customers and managing customer orders, managing the sales orders for the customers and all that, right? So we are not able to go through them in depth because of time, right? So for today, we'll just go through an overview of all the different modules. Then we have also seen requests from people. A lot of people need access to the environment, right? So we shared a couple of sites, right? So we talked about the trials.dynamics.com. A number of us are already leveraging that, but we might need something more, right? So we'd look at that in the other aspect of today's session, right? So we have for the financial aspect, for those that are into finance or those that would be majoring in finance consultants, right? So you'll be looking at the general ledger, accounts payable, account receivable, cash and bank, cost management, credit and collection, expense management, right? So these are the modules that are finance related, right? So for the supply chain aspect, that has to do with your sales and marketing, procurement. How do you procure from vendors, right? So we have for our SCM parts, which is supply chain. We have product information management, where we are able to manage all our product masters and product variants. We have um, some important parameters and setups too. You're also able to add your sizes, size group, colors, and all that, right? So it's a very, very robust module. The different modules here are very robust. As part of the supply chain management, we also have our sales and marketing, right? So here, we manage our sales order, sales agreement, sales return, prices and discount, right? So you'd see that you have some corresponding forms, right, or features between your supply chain and finance, right? So, I mean, in a business, money would be moving, the product is also moving, and information is also moving, right? So that's so you need a system that can manage all these different parameters or factors, right? So your money, your product movement, and also information, right? So that's why we don't have them in silos, right? So we have you see that you have your sales order form on your sales and marketing, and at the same time you also have it on your account receivable, right? So we also have that. Then we have our procurement and sourcing, right? So your procurement and sourcing has to do with your vendor. How do you source goods for your vendor, right? So you're able to categorize your vendors. Here you're also able to manage things like your purchase requisition, purchase orders. We have a lot of reports for that. If you have consignment goods, you're also able to manage them using this module. Then still talking about the supply chain aspect, right? So aside from product information management, sales and marketing, then procurement and sourcing, we also have our inventory management, right? So you go to a particular, let's say retail, even outside of retail, for those in other supply chain phases like your manufacturing or distribution, right? So you'd have a warehouse or and you'd have inventory in your warehouse, right? So we have a warehouse management module, then we have inventory management module, right? So you're able to manage your orders, inbound orders that are moving from the vendors to your site, then outbound orders that are moving, goods that are moving from your site to outside to the consumer, right? So we also have um, features in the system to manage all that. So we have a lot of now, like I mentioned earlier, finance is also moving, right? So we have different journals to track the movement of finance as the products are moving, right? So we have as part of the settings for your chart of accounts, would have done all that, right? So we have a very, very robust application to manage a big enterprise, right? So, and it supports multi-currency, multi-legal entity, right? So if you have business across different locations, you're able to have you're able to know how your business is running across your different location. We also have a master planning, right? So master planning across production, across inventory management, right? So you want to plan ahead before you go on to the production floor. You don't want a situation where you're ready for production for those in the manufacturing space, and you find out that you have some materials that are missing, right? So you don't have enough bomb, right? So with your master planning, you're able to do things like forecasting, demand forecasting, and all that, right? So we have that within the system. Also, um, we have transport management is also a part of our supply chain. Vendor collaboration, right? So vendor collaboration is to extend the system to our vendors, right? So we're able to give them access to the system, and with that, we want to manage things like our RFQs, right? So you have let's say you want to work on a project and you want vendors, contractors to bid for the project, right? So typically you send it via email, or you make an ad and you tell companies about it. But with vendor collaboration, right? So you're able to um, give them a portal to respond to your RFQs, right? And it makes the whole process automated and very, very easy, right? So transport management has to do with transportation, tracking the movement of your shipments, right? And configuring routes, and selecting the best route, invoices that has to do with transport, your freight bills and invoices. Then we have a couple of reports that we are able to run to see how this our transportation management is doing, right? So we have all this within the system, right? So that's for the supply chain aspect. We also have retail and commerce, right? So Microsoft has recently introduced the commerce exam MB340, right? So for those in the retail industry, right? So we have a product for that, and so we have the standalone for commerce, right? So if you are just looking at the commerce, managing the retail aspect of your business, right? So we have a standalone for that. You are able to manage your different retail channels. If you have an e-commerce store, right? So you're able to link it to your retail headquarters, right? So your retail headquarters, this is a retail headquarter, and the headquarter, you're able with the headquarter, which is this F&O environment, you're able to manage, your different retail channels, stores. You're able to configure pricing and discounts, catalog assessment and assessment, right, for all your different products. You're able to give coupons for loyal customers, and also manage your employees across your different stores. You also have an overview of your customers, right? So you're able to manage your customers across all your different stores. So we can look at all these they are very, very robust, and going in depth into them will take a couple of time, right? So like I mentioned earlier, we are looking at having another series later, maybe in July, right? So where we're able to go through all these modules, starting with the financials, right? So finance is the backbone of every business, right? So before you're able to use these other modules, you need to configure your finance, which is your general ledger, that speaks to your different accounts, your main account, your journals, your journal entries, and what have you. So these modules, they are very, very robust, individually, and you have a lot of features, and you would most likely not find a business that would use all the features within this product, right? So it's a generic product that cuts across different industries, right? So most times for your particular business, you only focus on what you need for that business, right? So outside of that, we also have the HR, right? So the HR also has a standalone, for managing your employees, right? So employees have self-service access, right? So if you have an employee that wants to raise a requisition, maybe they need to replace their laptop or something. Sorry, what we so all the employee needs to do is to log into the system and have access to the self-service portal, raise their requisition from there, or they want to they want to raise expense requisition, travel requisition. They are able to do that. The HR manager is also able to manage the employees, right, their benefits, compensation, right. We also have payroll. Performance management is also another part. We have a lot of features within the system, right? So then employee performance, so in some companies, employees are expected to take courses, right, with respect to personal development. So you can also track how the employees are doing with that. If you have for appraisals, right, so we're also able to track that performance review goals, and all that within the system. So that's like the third modular component, or the fourth, right? So I talked about finance, supply chain, then HR, then we also have our retail. So this is the fourth modular component of the F&O application, right? So we have this within the system, and we also have project management and accounting. So Microsoft, if you want to have these as standalone, right? So Microsoft has separated the applications, right? So you could have all these as standalone. Maybe you're only interested in the finance, right? So you could have finance license. You're only interested in supply chain. You could purchase your supply chain license. You're only interested in HR. We have Dynamics 365 HR standalone, right? And we also have commerce standalone. Then we also have project management and accounting, right? So project management and accounting has to do with project management, right? Your typical project management, but this is more comprehensive and more robust. Here, you are able to track a lot of more other things, your resources. You are able to track your project, and every project has financial components, right? So for most of the other project management softwares that you have, you're not able to track finance. You're only able to track the progress of the project, right? So you're able to track finance here, quotation, and even plan for the project, right? So you have a really robust feature, timesheets, resources, and all that within the application. So we have this 6 or 5 different modular applications in finance and operation. So if you're interested in finance and operation, you could have all if you want to use all, but that's really not likely for most businesses, right? So that's an overview of the functionalities that we have in finance and operation. So that's the first part of today's session. Do we have any questions so far? The second part would be around deployment, right? So a lot of people want to have access to the environment aside from trial, right? So the trial would give you an access to a limited access, let's say in 30 days, and you are not able to explore the full functionalities of the application, right? So we have another option in deployment. So aside from trial, so we talked about the deployment options in our first series. We mentioned that we have the VHD, which is on-premise. So if you have a system with a very, very good spec, let's say you have a 32 gig RAM SSD system, right? So you can have the finance and operation application residing on your system, right? So if you also have Azure credits, right? So you are also able to deploy on Azure, right? So this one that I have currently, this is on Azure, um, and it runs on my subscription. So I have a subscription here, and this is the VM, right? This is the name of the VM. So here I can turn it off, restart, typical Azure processes, right? So we talked about that, right? So today the other part will be looking at how do you how do you have full access to the system by installing it locally on your machine, right? So before we go into that, do we have any questions so far based on the overview, or any concerns or any comments? I would like some feedback at this point. Rashid, are you trying to say something?
No, not at all. I'm a newbie. I'm just trying to follow, and I will still need to do a comprehensive research more on this Office 365. I'm really enjoying your analysis. Is a very good one. So I will still need to go back to drawing board and learn more. So thank you.
Yes, okay, that's good feedback. Thanks for that. And were you in the previous two sessions that we had?
No. I'm not. In fact, it was a friend that we did that Power BI training together that sent the link to our platform that there is an Office 365 training somewhere that we should join. So I quickly ran down to join. I was surprised that none of them was even here because they came early. They were unable to log on. So maybe that was why they cannot join, about 3 or 4 people like that. So I just joined. So I'm not part of the one that was done before. This is my first experience.
Okay, you're welcome.
Yeah, thank
So we'll be sharing some resources, right? So we'll be sharing some resources, um, and top of it is Microsoft Learn. Microsoft Learn. So if you go to this site, just Google search Microsoft Learn,
you.
right?
Okay.
Click on the first link. Yes. So you have a lot of
Yeah,
resources, learning resources here.
and Hamad,
Yeah.
I think there's a resource
Yeah.
specific we have created, so I can share that on the chat. You say that.
Okay. Yeah, thank you so much, Ahmed. So you can drop the link if you have it, Ahmed. Right. So it's the same. It, the link Ahmed will be dropping is just a curated learning material, right? So you have all of them across Microsoft stack, right? So you could filter based on whatever Microsoft product you want to work with, right? So you have dynamic. In our case, we are working with Dynamics. If you filter to F&O, finance and operation, right? So you have a lot of resources to consume in this area. So you can also filter based on your role. If you're interested in technical, functional, you want to be a developer, and we also have this levels filter here. Okay, I think Ahmed sent it to the chat.
Chat, okay. Okay, that's fine.
Yeah. Yes, thanks a lot, Ahmed. So we have, if you also want to go through module or learning part. So learning part is um, one or two modules, one or more modules, right, that speak to a particular area. So you have all these options within the system, right? So if you want to get started, for the sake of Rashid that has just joined us today, right? So you need to log on to trials.dynamics.com. Um, Once you are on the site, so you have the other Dynamics product here, but in our case, we are working with finance and operation, and you can put your email there, preferably an Office 365 email. Let me try this. I'm not sure I've used this email before. So the phone number does not matter. Click on get started and it will start provisioning an environment for you where you can use and try the application. Of course, being trial, it has limited functionality, right? But you're also able to learn with it, right? So just follow the prompts and you can get started to have access to all this, right? So while you provision an environment, right? So you would have so if you want to, so I mean, the best way to learn is that when you are going through any resource like the one we have shared on the chat, right? So just anytime you see something, go back to the environment and look at it real time. So you're not just going through learning content, right? So back and forth between what you're learning and the environment. That's why access to the environment is very, very important, right? So I think that's majorly about that for the trials. So we'll be going on to the next option with deployment, right? So the other option that we have is through Azure, right? So you can see this is my machine. This environment is currently hosted on my machine in Azure, and you see that I have a subscription. How much do I have today? So I have a couple of dollars, right? So being a cloud product, you are running. Okay, no, I don't have this. So this, I think that's how much I've spent. So you also have the option of hosting it on Azure. Um, so okay, right. So I'm currently hosting mine on Azure, and this is like the full. You get your full access hosting on Azure, right? So the other aspect or the other option that we have for hosting is through what we know as the VHD. VHD means virtual hard disk, right? So if you have a system, an high-end system, you're able to install it directly into your system. So we'll be going through that now for the end for the other part of the session. Um, Hello, Shanice, are you on the call?
Yes, I am. Hello, Ahmed. How you doing?
Uh, Good morning. So, I mean, I had to call your name because you were really interested in setting up on your system, right?
Yes. Thank you.
Yeah. So, yeah, we'll go through that right now. Okay, so if you don't have Azure credits, if you are tired of the trials, trials give you limited functionality and you want to have full access to the system, this is how to do it, right? So first thing first, log on to lcs.dynamics.com, right? So LCS is the official portal for the deployment of Dynamics 365 Finance and Operations. So I posted the link in the chat, right? So in LCS is where so LCS speaks majorly to technical consultants, right? Because technical consultants are in charge of the deployment and all that, right? So log on to LCS, and if you have an Office 365 account, it's preferable to log on with an Office 365 account, right? So this is where we do all our deployment. You can see I have a couple of deployments. I deployed, these are just test environments that I deployed, right? So this particular one that I deployed on Azure was done via LCS, right? So this is where so you click on new project, you have the option using an implementation project. So for a customer that is interested in onboarding to finance and operation, and they want to get started with deployment after they have purchased the licenses needed, right? So they need to come over here, and this would not be grayed out. I don't have a real license. I'm using more like a trial license, right? So that's why I have this grayed out. Then this is for pre-sales, those that want to do like a demo to clients. Then this is for learning, right? Then on-premise. So we have all these options. So in my case, I would pick for learning. So let's say Dynamics user group, create a project. So I pick a project, finance and operation. In my case, industry does not matter. Methodology. So we have implementation methodologies, right? So this aspect speaks to project management, right? So I mean, every project you'd have the analysis phase, the design phase, the development phase, the deployment phase, and the post go live phase, right? So that's like the generic project phases that we have across any project, any IT project or software project, right? So we now have like specifics, different specific based on whatever methodology you pick, right? So I can pick any methodology, it does not really matter, right? So if you have an existing project and you want to import your users into the new project, you can toggle this to yes, right? So like I said, this is LCS, and LCS is where you do your deployment. LCS is where you have all your project team. Is more like an exclusive project management portal for Dynamics 365 finance and operation implementation, right? So you have all these different phases, and you can check this when you are done with the deployment. We are not doing deployment, but just to give you an overview of how deployment works and how LCS works, right? So you have a description of what to do at every phase. Microsoft wants to make implementation easy for customers, right? So here, you're expected to do after the analysis phase, you're expected to go to design and develop, testing, deployment, and operation. And you have different activities under each phase, right? So you have description and you have links, helpful links, right? If you need more info, Microsoft has made it really easy, right? So you have that, and you'd have like different project. You can set your project timeline, you can edit, so you have all this within your LCS. So if you are looking to deploy on Azure, you need to come to click on this button here, the is it called breadcrumb, this three horizontal line, then click on cloud hosted environment, and you can deploy on your Azure. Can you see it says configure Azure connector, right? So Azure connector is more like a connector that links your LCS to your Azure, right? So because you want to deploy on Azure and you need to have a subscription, right? So it links your environment, and you know that your environment needs to run on a subscription. So it links your environment to a particular subscription, right? So you need to configure this and follow the prompt. It's a pretty long process, not really long, but it's not something we are able to do on this call. The plan is to go through the other option, right? So this is the option to deploy your environment on Azure. And if you do that, it means you have a subscription and it would run on your Azure credits, right? So you have this pay-as-you-go model for cloud services that you'll be using. Right. So the other option that we want to look at today is the VHD option. So your VHD is the virtual hard disk, and virtual hard disk is a form of hard disk, right? Just like you have your hard disk, right? So you have your finance operation environment there. So all you need to do is on your LCS homepage, come to your asset library or shared asset library. So shared asset library is a portal or a tile or a page where you have different assets with respect to your finance and operation. Right. So here you're able to see downloadable VHD. So this is what we need. So your downloadable VHD, you'd see that we have different versions. Finance and operation is a SaaS application, right? And Microsoft keeps improving and they keep releasing different versions every year or maybe 3 times a year. Right, so you have the latest version for VHD being version 17, but for the cloud option, if you are hosting on Azure, you have, I think we already have version 20. So the VHD version being that it is going to reside on premise, right? So it's always versions lower than the cloud version. So how do you go about this? You want to have it on your system. Now you have part 1, part 2, part 3, part 4, part 5, part 3, part 6, part 7, part 8, part 9. Now these are chunks of the VHD. They have divided it into different chunks to make the download easy. Right. So you need to download for version 17, you need to download part 1 to part 9. Right. So if you want a lower version, so as you can see, we have version 13, 10.0.13. This is version 13, right? So it has 11 parts. So you need to download from part 1 to part 11, right? So I think I have, so I've downloaded this. I have this on my hard disk, right? So in total, if you download from part 1 to, let's say, part 9 or part 11, whatever the case is, so the size will be like 100 gig, right? So let me open my hard drive and see if I have so first thing first, you start downloading all this. Click on part 1. So let's start with part 1. We're not able to do that on the call, so click on this. So it will start downloading 3 gig, right? So but I'm not downloading. I have this already, right? So I've cancelled it. So when I'm done with this part 1, I go on to do part 2, part 3, part 4 till I download the full VHT, right? So after that, after downloading it, I should have a file up to like 100 gig. I think that's like the approximate size of the file, right? So I'm trying to, so I have it in one of my hard disks. Let me show you. Right. So this is what you should have when you're done downloading, right? So can you see this part 1 to part 14? This is, I think, version, whatever version it is, but it has part 1 to part 14, right? So when you are done downloading the different chunks, just click on the first one, right? So once you click on the first one, it would automatically pack the rest of the parts, right? And you get a single VHD file. So as you can see, this is 100 gig in size. So it means your system, you need to have more than 100 gig. At least you should have 200 gig SSD. So if you have 256 gig SSD PC, you're able to do this, right? So click on the first one, it automatically packs the other parts as a single file, right? So you're going to have this, right? So we have our VHD. This is our VHD. This is an hard disk image, right? So we have an image after we download from our shared asset library. Then we now go to what we call, we need an hypervisor to run a VHD, right? So an hypervisor is basically a software that allows you to perform virtualization, right? So you want to have a computer inside another computer, right? So you want to have a VM inside another machine, right? So you need to make use of an Hyper-V, right? So your Hyper-V, Microsoft Windows has an inbuilt Hyper-V, right? So we have HyperV Manager. This is Microsoft's owned, right? So we have some other options. We have for Oracle, we have VMware, we have Oracle One Box. I think it's called One Box. Then we have some other Hyper-V softwares, that we can use. Hypervisor softwares, right? So you can use any. And we have. Hello, can you hear me?
Yes, we can hear you, Hamid.
We lost at the point. We lost at the for some seconds, but we can hear you now.
Okay, sorry about that. So I was saying, after you are done downloading the files, so you need an Hyper-V software, right? So an Hyper-V software allows for virtualization. So you're able to have a VM inside of your host machine, right? So you can use any available Hyper-V, but by default, Windows has an hypervisor, right? So you open your Hyper-V Manager. So I have my Hyper-V. This is what you'd get when you click on Hyper-V Manager, right? So this is what you have, and you can start setting up your virtual machine here, right? So I need to start after downloading what I have. So I have it in this folder in my local disk. So if I go to so this is it here on my machine. This is the downloaded file. Can you see this? So to start, I need to create a new virtual machine. I click on virtual machine. Right. So after that, I just follow the prompt. So I give it a name. Let's say D365 user group, right, for the purpose of this. So if you want to change the location, by default it would store in this location, but if you have a different location where you want to store it, right, so you can decide to change the location, right? So but it's not something major. So I click on next. Then generation, this generation, we have generation 1, generation 2, and you have the differences, right? So this does not really matter. Anyone you pick, your machine would run smoothly, right? So in our case, we would pick generation 1, and I click on next, right? So on this page, we have assigned memory, and because you are having, like I mentioned, virtualization is having a computer running on another computer, right? So because you want to have a computer running on a particular host computer, your PC, so you need to assign this virtual machine that will be running on your PC a memory. Now we have some rules. When you are doing virtualization, generally you want to have a VM on your system. You should not assign more than the host memory to your machine, right? So if you're using a 16 gig RAM, for example, laptop SSD 16 gig RAM, your virtual machine to take less than 8 gig RAM, because your host needs to have more allocation than the virtual machine, right? So in my case, I have a 32 gig RAM PC and SSD 512 SSD, right? So I'm able to allocate up to 15 gig or 16 gig RAM, right? So or I can allocate lesser. I can do let me do 15 gig. Um, Right, so dynamic memory, it means you want the space to expand, right? Because the more you use a machine, the more you'd have some, cache files, some garbage files, right? So you want it to expand, right? So I click on next, right? So also we need to configure networking, and networking, because of course the VHD would be residing on your personal system, but you still need to connect to the internet, right? For you to provision admin user, because of the technology Microsoft uses for their product, right? So they use Active Directory. So you need to log in, right? So you need to log in with a Microsoft account, that's so that you can get the direct access. So we have this concept of security roles, where you have like different, security roles, and so for you to successfully log into the right security to the right security role through the right security role and have the necessary access, right? So you need to have access to the internet, and that's why you need to configure networking, right? So in our case, we'll just leave it as not connected, right? Or we can use default switch. So we still need to create a switch for it, right? So here we now have to select our virtual hard disk, right? So the first option, if we are creating a new virtual hard disk from scratch, right? So we need to select, but here we have an existing virtual hard disk that we have downloaded from our LCS, right? So I need to browse and go to the location where I have my virtual hard disks downloaded, right? So it could be in your downloads, but in my own case, I've moved it to a folder in my local disk known as D365 FO VHD, right? So I click on this and I select my hard disk, right? And I click on next, right? So I click on finish. So I have my virtual machine here created, as simple as that, right? So we still need, before we are able to, so I can log in now. I can start the machine. I can click on start here, right? So it's starting, but as it is now, we have not configured network, and because we have not configured network, we are not able to connect to the internet. So we still need to do our network configuration, right? So so our machine is starting. I'll click on connect. So the machine is coming up. This is our virtual machine, right? So this is the virtual machine that we have, and we have a generic password for every virtual machine. You can see the password on Microsoft documentation. So it's pass at word one. Let me post it on. So if you check Microsoft documentation, this is the password, pass at word one, right? Pass at word one. So it takes me into my virtual machine, and this is my virtual machine, right? So it says that my Windows license is expired. Okay. Okay, so my internet is connected already, but I don't have a license, right? So I need to rearm, right? So we have, so because this is VHD, right? So and the virtual machine makes use of Windows Server license, right? You need a license, and it says my license is expired. So if you use a virtual machine with an expired license, you'd find out that your machine would just be disconnecting at some point. So you need to use the right license, right? So you can always rearm, right? So we have a command prompt script that we run, right? So Riam, I think is Riam. Let me just confirm. Is a single line of script. SLV Riam. So what it does is if you run this script, sorry, Windows Server license Riam. Yeah. So what it does is when you run this script, this line on your PowerShell, it would give you an extension, right? So it would extend um, the Windows license that you have, right? So I can run my PowerShell script, run as admin, very, very important. So I need to, sorry, SL Manager, yeah. So I got a prompt, as you can see. It says command completed successfully. Please restart the system for changes to take effect, right? So I need to restart the system. So when I restart, I would get this Windows license expire. I would get additional 180 days, right, as an extension to this. So I click on restart. This should not take time, right? So when the restart is done, I would have access to finance and operation on my system, right? So I don't need Azure credit, I don't need trials, and I would have full access to finance and operation, and I'm able to learn, I'm able to do development, right? So if we have customizations to do, right? So we have all that within the system. So I would like this to come up just a couple of seconds to wow. Pass at word one. So you can change the password. You can, it didn't take effect. So I think I've used this license more than 6 times. I think they have a six times cap, but let me try it one more time to confirm. Um, so sorry. Let me run the command again. I need to run as admin. So it should still work. Even if you don't have license, it would work, but it would shut down automatically at some point, and it might be frustrating. So it's better you have it's licensed before you start using it. So I think I've used, I've expanded my license. So SLM, SLMGR, SLMGR, we are. Okay. So let me restart, and hopefully this time it works. But if it does not work, we would continue. We are still able to access the application locally and work on the application. So this kind of environment is known as a tier 1 environment, right? So we have different tiers of environment. We have tier 1, tier 2, tier 3, tier 4, tier 5, then production, right? So the tiers of environment has to do with the capability of the environment, right? So in terms of resources, in terms of what you can do, right? So your tier 1 environment is typically for learning and development, right? So in our case, we're using a tier 1 environment, and your VHD is typically a tier 1 environment. So let's hope it has reamped the license. So we should get a 180 days extension, right? So it has worked, right? So it says Windows license valid for 180 days, right? So we have this. Then to start using the application, we need to provision admin user, right? So this is here it needs internet, and this would basically give you access. It would basically provision access and link to your Active Directory so that you have the right security access to the application. So let me. So you can, if you this has to be an Office 365 email, so you can't use a personal email for this, right? So you need to provision admin user every time you log in. But if you are using the cloud version, you don't have to provision admin user, right? So that's one of the differences. But for the on-premise version or the tier 1 VHD version, you need to always provision admin user, right? So it should prompt you to log in. So the application is cloud based, and if you want to get started, so you can either go to your Internet Explorer. So if you don't want to go through Internet Explorer, you can also go through your IIS, right? So just search for IIS. So you can go through IIS, right? So you can click on the computer name or the machine name, click on sites, right? So you can you go to your AOS service, click on AOS service, right? So you have so it has so admin users successfully updated to this, right? So you need to have this prompt before you're able to so to access your environment, click on websites, browse websites, and you should be able to access your finance and operation environment without having internet access, right? So if it's staying directly on your residing on your PC locally, right? So with this, you have the same access, you have the same application as the one on the cloud and the one on trial, right? So you don't have to, you don't need an Azure credit for this. It's taking some time to come up. It's loading already, right? So it would, so like I mentioned earlier, the purpose of provisioning admin user is to grant you security rights, right? So so it would ask you to log in. So it has just sent me a code. Sorry. Um, so after logging in, you should have access to your finance and operation. So with this, you have, your finance and operation, and this is not on cloud, right? So this is using the resources on your system, right? So this is not cloud, and you have full access to finance and operation. You can use this to learn. This is similar to what you have on, of course, it has limitations. It has its own. So if you go to settings, you're able to see, or if you go to help, you're able to see the version about, right? So this is version 10.0, the one we downloaded. So this is the option for the VHD. As you can see, this is on my personal computer, and I have full access, and I have all the features within the application. I can do anything, right? But the only limitation, the major limitation here, is that you are not able to connect to Power BI, right? So we have some Power BI workspaces here. If I try to, let's say this is a Power BI workspace, cache overview, right? So it has a Power BI dashboard, but you'd see that it will tell me that I'm not connected to Power BI, right? So it says Power BI embedded not enabled. Can you see that? So if I go to the cloud version, and I try to go to this particular workspace, Power BI workspace, I'm able to access it. So that's like the major difference that we have within the VHD and the cloud version, right? So here you're able to learn, you're able to do normal, run the application normally without an access to the internet, without running it on your Azure credit. So as long as you have a compatible PC, SSD at least 256, then your RAM, you should have at least 16 gig RAM. Better if you have 32, right? Because the application is an high-end one, and so you are good to go. You can follow the process, and you have the application locally on your PC. Right. So at this point, I think we've covered what we had in mind for today. And if there's any question, we're able to take them now. Any questions? Okay. But how was the process? Does it look straightforward? I would like some feedback. The process of setting it up locally. What do you think about it? Shanice, are you on the call?
I am. Um,
Is it something you are able to do now? If you have the VHD downloaded, can you go through the whole process yourself?
what happened last time I tried to do this was the fact that I didn't have this new. I didn't have the 1 second. What did you call it? Um,
iPad.
yes, I didn't have that. That was what was missing because yeah, I think that
This,
was the HyperV Manager. I didn't have it.
yes. Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah. So just okay. So for the hyper-V, I think there's a configure. You need to turn it on before you're able to use it for the first time, right? So just search
Okay.
for hyper-V.
Oh,
So if you
manager.
search for hyper-V here, you would see turn window features on and off, right? So
Okay.
that, yeah. So if you want to, no, not server manager. Okay, I'm still on the VM. So you need to come to, let's search for Hyper-V,
Mm-hmm.
right? So ordinarily, because I have enabled the application, that's why I have it show up here. But if you are
Mm-hmm.
trying it for the first time, this is what you'd have. So you click on this, right?
Yeah.
So you get this. So you need to
Yeah.
toggle this, you need to check this box, click on Hyper-V, then click on OK. Then I think you'd have to restart your system.
Yeah. So I think it's the bit that was missing. So after seeing you walk through it, I'm going to try it again.
Oh,
Yeah, this is the
awesome. So
pretty. Thank you.
yeah. Yeah, so you
Yeah.
have some other options, like I mentioned. I mean, not only Hyper-V, so you have you have Oracle One
Mm,
Box, also you have VMware. If you want to download those softwares online, right? So it's fine, but this comes with every Windows software. So if you are using a Windows system, you really don't need to download VMware or Oracle application as the hypervisor.
okay.
Okay. Yeah. Um, Rashid, are you on the call?
Yeah, yes, I'm here.
Yeah. So I hope it was not overwhelming. Was it?
Let me confess, it is. If I said
Yeah.
it's not overwhelming, I'm lying. As a starter, but at least you have pushed me on the run. Just for me to work harder, so that I can keep up with the pace. So that's it. Um,
Yeah.
uh,
I understand.
there
I
is
was
no
not
going back.
expecting you to say otherwise. Actually. Yeah. So I mean, just go through the resources that we
Yeah,
have.
yeah.
Yeah.
I've already copied the
Then
link. I will do it. I will do it. I will
awesome.
do it. I will do justice to it and see what I can come up with. Thank you.
Yeah, so like the dynamic space is actually experiencing a boom, right? So a lot of companies want to associate with Microsoft, and so there are a lot of requirements for dynamics professionals everywhere. So I think it's a really good area for one to embrace, right, as an IT consultant, and there are a couple of opportunities there, right? Chanis, is that the case?
Yes, it is the case, and I have to say, um, I don't know about Nigeria, but this side of the world that I am, which is UK, it's really, really booming, and I think we should all make the most of it. I am anyway, and yeah, I think also another thing I've discovered is that because Ahmed went through a lot of the modules, and one thing I discovered is that you don't have to know all the modules. Am I right, Ahmed?
Yeah, that's
Yeah,
right.
you
That's
can't.
right. Yeah, mention.
Yes. So I don't know if you want to just let us know to start with the core modules that you most customers implement. Yeah, I mean, is it worth talking about it? Because I mean,
Yeah.
I used to think I have to know the modules, but I think you reassured me that this is like, for example, general ledger, start with that, then, think about doing purchase, ledger. So you might want to just talk about it for the benefit of the others.
Thanks for that observation, Shanice. Right. So Shanice is based in the UK, and we have a relationship, before the call. So um, I mentioned that at some point over the call, right? So I mentioned that the finance and operation application is very, very robust, and it has like different modular parts, right? So Microsoft themselves, they saw that as a business, you are most likely not going to use all the modules of the application. So they broke it down into different modular parts, right? So you have finance, you have supply chain, you have project operations, you have commerce, and you have HR. So you have all those different areas, right? So you could be a functional consultant for finance, or a functional consultant for supply chain, or for HR, or for project operation, or for commerce, right? Then another role is technical, right? So technical does not really have these specializations, right? So because functional has to do with using the application, technical has to do with deployment, customization, setting up, and all those technical bits, right? So those are the different aspects that we have. And I mentioned that for finance, we have this the following modules that cover finance: accounts payable, accounts receivable, cash and bank, cost accounting, cost management, credit and collections, expense management, fixed assets, and general ledger, right? So these are the basic finance related modules. If you are talking about supply chain, we have production, inventory management, master planning, procurement and sourcing, product information management. So, and we also have sales and marketing, then transport management and warehouse. So a supply chain functional consultant would focus on those six areas. Then we also have commerce or retail, and it's just a single module here. But the retail has some other parts, right? So like e-commerce, like we have the modern POS, we have a POS application, that links with this retail module, right? Then the HR, so we have all these different setups. It's also a robust feature. Then HR would focus on HR. So we have standalone. So these different areas, we have standalone for them, right? So the HR will focus on HR. We have D365 HR, right, separately within the system. Right, so those are the modular areas, and you really, in most places, you don't take everything, right? The application is very robust, so you focus on either finance or supply chain or commerce or HR or project accounting. So project management and accounting has to do with project management and accounting, right? So you want to track the financials. Most project management applications that we have, you only track projects, you only track the progress of the project. But with this module, you're able to track the financials also, aspect of project, right? So those are the modular areas that we have, and you'd most likely want to specialize in one. In Nigeria, we do everything, to be honest, right? So you'd see someone that does everything, and that's the reason is not far-fetched, is because we don't really have enough consultants, right, like that. So if you find a consultant in Dynamics, they would most likely be skillful in other areas, and they might have specializations, right? So based on, and also our requirements, Nigerian-based businesses, we might not really need to make use of all the areas of the application, right? So but generally, that's so for most people, if you are going to be a functional consultant, you need to start with
Sorry,
finance. Yeah.
sorry, Ahmed. So just to share my own experience, for example, my very
Yeah.
first exposure where F&O is concerned was HR.
Mm.
So that was the only module that the
Yeah.
customer was deploying. So
Interested
it's
in.
that Exactly. So, it goes to say that, depending on what the customer is deploying. So for the Nigerian market, like you said, they might not necessarily look at HR, but they might be interested in deploying, is it finance you said, or is it, I can't remember.
Yeah.
Yeah. So just wanted to share my own experience.
Yeah, to be honest, I mean that's what's obtainable in most other parts of the world. Nigeria is a peculiar state, like we know, right? So you'd find like normally you'd find people specialize in those areas, right? Different areas, HR separately, find an HR consultant, manufacturing, find someone solely into manufacturing, they don't do any other thing. They might have knowledge of other areas, but they are focused on a particular area. So that's what's obtainable in the ideal situation. In Nigeria, we do almost everything, right? So yeah. So getting started, if you want to be a functional consultant, right? So if you are not looking at specializing, if you're a Nigerian-based consultant like me and other people, right? So you start with finance, you start with general ledger, accounts payable, accounts receivable, because finance is the backbone of everything, right? Majorly. So if you want to, let's say, implement supply chain, you still need the financial aspect, right? Your journals, your main accounts, and all that. Then also for your retail, you still need finance. Supply chain management, you need finance. Um, so then finance is like the foundation for every functional consultant in Nigeria, of course. So in other places that people specialize, so you'd just going through your specialization, right? So I think that's it. Thanks for the observation, Shanice. um, so where do we go from here? Like I mentioned, we are looking at having another set of series that would be more detailed and will take financials, right? So we want to go into it in depth, and we'll see where we can go from there. So we're looking at sometimes maybe next month, or depending on availability, right? So but in the meantime, we have all the resources, we have access to the environment